McNemer test. So if I want to test any significant difference in the oxygen requirement status of COVID cases at the time of admission and just before the outcome. So this was like same set of individual, 180 individual, where the oxygen requirement, whether the requirement was yes or no at the time of admission and just before the outcome, means discharge or death. So this was one question. So if I go back to this Jamovi data set, in this case, for this option, you can see there is an option of paired sample. So you click on this paired sample and then you can shift these variables. So there is a row and there is a column. So remember, we have discussed that the independent variable should be there in the row and dependent variable should be there in the column. So we have to see the oxygen requirement. So that is the dependent variable. So oxygen requirement, maybe I will shift that in this column. This is a dependent, and then I may see oxygen requirement at the time of admission and at the just before the discharge. So here will be the other one will be the oxygen 2. So it is the oxygen 2, and then you can see here it is the, again it is the chi-square, because by default it takes the chi-square, and in this case we don't click the percentages. You can click the percentages as well, but that is not going to give you the valid percentages, because here we calculate the marginal proportion. Now it will please focus for few minutes here in the output. This is the oxygen requirement before the you can say, but in this case let me shift this to here, because this pre-post will be in row, you shift the oxygen 1, and then in column you shift the oxygen 2. So now you can see this oxygen 1. So whatever is there in this row, this no and this yes. So this, if I say that this no, this whole row is for the people before, at the time of admission. So this no and yes is for the oxygen requirement at the time of at the time of admission. Whereas there is again this no and this yes. So this vertical no and vertical yes, it is at the time of discharge. So you can say here that if I compare, so this one, initially there were 48 people who were requiring the oxygen. So this is the 48 individual who were requiring the oxygen before at the time of admission, and at the time of discharge, total number of 19 people were requiring the oxygen. 19 people, because this is the yes after, at the time of discharge, this oxygen 2. So you have to calculate the marginal proportion. That's why we call this McNemer as a marginal proportion test, because in this case you are testing the proportion of the margins. In this case you will calculate that initial requirement was 48 divided by total 180, whereas the later it was 19 out of 180. So the oxygen requirement decreased at the time of, just before the time of discharge to the people, and this was significant. So if I have to write the proportion, how will I write? I will show with the calculator. So this is the calculator. So before, so I may, just a sec, I'll shift this to this. You can see this was total. If I see the marginal proportion, so the total number of individual, they were 48. So 48 were people who were requiring oxygen at the time of admission. So 48 divided by 180. So total 26.6% of the individual were requiring the oxygen at the time of admission. Whereas if you see, yes, this too, that means this column tells you the requirement at the time of just before the discharge. So 19 people out of 180 were requiring. So instead of that, you can again write 19 divided by 180. That means 10.5%. So the oxygen requirement was decreased from 26.5% to 10.5%. And that's why we call this McNemer as a marginal proportion, because it is only calculating the margin. What are these two margins? So one margin is this, that is the 33 plus 15, that is the 48. And the second margin is this, 4 plus 15, that is the 19. So these two proportion we are interested, because this tells you the pre and post status, which we have to compare. And then you can write the value of chi-square is 22.7 with 1 degree of freedom and p-value. Now how to enter this result? You can see here in the McNemer. I think that table, it is not here. Maybe we can show you next time, that you can enter in a 2x2 table that percentage, and then similarly you can write these values, that the value it has decreased from the 26.6% to 10.5%, and which was significant. So that's how you do the marginal proportion calculation in McNemer test. So did you understand this? Any ambiguity, then you can write in the chat box. Yes or no? So remember, could you understand the marginal proportion? That is important. If yes, then maybe there was one query regarding the that box plot, which I had to explain. Box and whisker plot. So I will discuss that and then we can practice. So if we see the box and whisker plot, let me plot one box and whisker, or we plotted some. So I'll go back to those plot. I think. Let me scatter plot descriptive. Maybe this descriptive. No. Let me see. So I'll go again. Maybe I'll do it. So I'll go to this exploration, and in exploration, I'll go to the descriptive. In descriptive, maybe I may shift some of the variables just to show the box plot. So this was, I think there's no continuous data here in this. So let me go age. Okay, yes, there is one age here. So let's see its box and whisker plot. Statistics I'll uncheck because I'm only focused on box plot now. And I'll go down and I'll come to this plot. And this is the box plot. Actually, I wanted to show you the other deviated one. So this is the box plot. So you can see the length here. So the length of the whisker, these two are known as the whisker. So this length depends on the extreme values, because here you can see the length of this whisker is greater than this whisker. Can you see? Can you appreciate the different length of the whisker here? All of you, please type yes or no. Neeraj is writing yes, Pradeep, everyone is writing yes. Now, do you know that what is this? So we have discussed that this is the median, this is the Q1, and this is the Q3. So this is the quartile 1, this is interquartile range, and this is median. And these are the other values. So if in your data set, so there will be some value which will be below this Q1, and there will be some value which will be above this Q1. So depending upon the range of values, this length of whisker changes. That means this shows that the values lower than quartile 1, it is going higher. That means its range is higher than the lower one. If we take like 100 observation, maybe 100 observation, and if we arrange it in the ascending, so its maximum length, if we say this, the maximum length of this whisker goes to 1.5 times the interquartile range. And this 1.5 times means the value which are above this 1.5, it will show it as a dot or as a asterisk, depending on SPSS or Jamovi. In SPSS, it shows the extreme value also. So in this case, this length of the whisker depends on the range of values which are there in the data set. And that's why, depending on that range of value, the length of the whisker changes. So if there are any values which are above this 1.5 interquartile range, then it will be pop up here. But if there are no values above this 1.5, then it might end before also. So this length tells you regarding the range of values, and because the range of values can be different for the lower quartile, that means the first quartile, and the last quartile. And that's why the length of the whisker is different. Did you get it? We may give you another demonstration. We may try to give you another demonstration with the values which we have to create. Maybe we will try to create one data set showing two extreme values, maybe the first quartile and the last quartile. So in this case, because there is no lower value which reached till 1.5 IQR, maybe this or this. So that's why you cannot see any dots here. Maybe with the more continuous data, let me show, if you wish. I'll again go to the day 1 where I have that continuous data. So this correlation I may open once. So this was for the correlation, and there we can see the vitamin D, because that was it was. So I may go to the, if this exploration, I may go to the descriptive, and then I may shift maybe this BMI, this cholesterol, cortisol, I'll go down because it must have. And then we can come down in this. Okay, by mistake, I think exploration, descriptive. So I will move this. And then we can see here box plot. I'm only plotting box plot here. So if you see this box plot, you can see the length. See, this is smaller than these values. And because the lower values, the range of values are not as high as this. That's why it is going down. Again, if you see this, you can see here that there are many values. So this length gets stopped at 1.5 IQR, and these are the values which are appearing above 1.5 IQR. Because in the down there was no value, that's why none is appearing. Similarly, you can see there is one is appearing down and the other is appearing up. So that is again showing more than 1.5. And similarly, these vitamin D also, you can see there are lower and higher. Higher there are many, but lower there is none. And similarly, this length represents the range of values which lies above this fourth quartile. So the range of values which are there in the first quartile and fourth quartile, because this whisker represents the range of values for the first and fourth quartile. That's why there is a difference. Did you get it? Sumit? Who asked this question? If I can recall, it was Sumit. Did you understand? And everybody else? regarding why this changes, there is a change in the whisker. I mean, there's a different. So how many or percentage of outlier is significant? So percentage, it is not like if out of, there is no objective criteria like 10% or 5%. If you say that it is 180 and if 10%, like if it is there, what you can do, you can run the analysis including the outlier and see the value. You can rerun the analysis excluding the outlier, and then you see that if it is not creating much of the difference, then include those outliers, because we discussed that there could be three reasons of the outlier. It could be a data entry error, it could be a measurement error, or it could be a genuinely high or low value. So in that case, if by removing outlier, even if you have removed the outlier and the data analysis is not having any significant change, in that case, it's better to include the outlier and run the analysis. But the most important is to report these outlier in your assumption that these many outliers were there, but still you have decided, or you can write that even after removing the outlier, the value and this was same, so you have decided to include those outlier, and the result which you are giving, that is with the inclusion of the outlier. Is it okay, Dr. Pradeep?